Starting off, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about how the Oscars went. I heard it was your first time ever going.
Well, it was too much work in a way. Well worth it though, the final ending of stepping on the stage and accepting that award. The whole thing was almost too much. To tell you how crowded it was, about half a mile away, there was already a line of cars trying to get into the entrance to the theater. And so when we finally got up there, there's another couple hundred of people waiting to get into the event. So this lady who met me from the academy, she was smart. She got me a wheelchair, although I don't really need it. But I got in the wheelchair and went right past the probably 200 people and got into the front. A lot of little parts to this whole thing, It's totally amazing. Bigger than anything I've ever been to.
How come you had never gone before?
That's a very question. I just hesitated and just procrastinated. And I knew there would be a lot of walking. And so I said to myself, I'm going to wait until I get an award and then I'll make myself available. And that's what happened.
What was it like when you heard Everything Everywhere All at Once had won Best Picture?
You just sit there and you don't know what's happening. They move me around during the last 5 minutes into the position, the first row instead of the third row. Then I knew something was up. So when they announced it, I jumped up and the other cast members were to my right. They all started they're younger, so they yell whoopee and so forth, And they came out with the award for the best picture of the year. Somebody handed it to me, so I just said, well, gee, this must belong to me. I hung on to it. Later on, they came and got it from me when I was in the after party because I hung on to it. I wasn't going to give it up. So they said they got to engrave it. So I guess the cast members don't get an award, an Oscar, to say that it belongs to the people who made the film because it's the best film of the year. So I the first time they asked me in the governor's ball for that award, I says, no, I'm not going to give it up. so so they went, and I don't know. A second person came and said, "You got to give it up. They're gotta engrave the name." I said, "Well, all right." So I gave it up and I continued eating. There were a lot of hors d'oeuvres. I didn't go to the after party. I just went to the governor's ball, they call it.
What is it about the movie that you think has resonated with so many people?
I think it's the love and forgiveness, in the sense it's like Jamie Lee Curtis, even before the award, after the filming sometime, she gave me a plaque or some kind of a frame piece, and it all says three things: be kind, be kind, be kind. So I guess that resonates the theme of the movie.
I know the Oscars, everyone's still talking about the Oscars, but it was a big moment at the SAG Awards for you as well. Your speech, I know, resonated with a lot of people.
Well, I really didn't intend to say anything outstanding to say. In fact, I was going to say something totally different. But once I got in there and faced the audience at the Screen Actors Guild, I thought, well, what have I experienced in my whole career? So I started from the very beginning when I was in Hollywood, and as I said, the main roles were played by white actors trying to be yellow actors. They somehow had that cliche thing of picking up the eyes with an eyepiece over the eyes, and it was the people who look like this. Although I myself have round eyes, I don't even know why they would slant the other ones. So that was the way it was in my early career. That I and other Asian actors never got any roles because they took white actors and put the eyepieces and little funny mustaches and goatees to make them look like what they thought was Chinese or Asian. And that did not resonate well with me because, I am what I am. I don't have somebody put on some funny makeup and make themselves look like a leading man, a Chinese or Asian leading man. They just use white actors because they didn't trust our box office value. But as I said on stage, I said, look at all these people. And I said, Michelle Yeoh and Key and all these people they're wonderful at what they're doing. And now the film has grossed, way over 100 million. So, and it was only made for about 15, 20 million. So you can see that they got their value out of that film. It was, in a sense, a low budget film that just magnified into a big box office film. And I hope everybody go and see it. You can't describe the film, you have to see it.
I know we've come a long way as far as Asian representation in Hollywood, but what would you still like to see?
Well, I like to see the writers write more characters that could be played by any nationality, whether it's Asian or Caucasian or Black and so forth, But you're talking about, I've waited, 70 years for this, and everything still seems to crawl along. The leading men, good-looking young actors and young ladies are not getting the roles. I'd like to see that move forward much faster.
I have to ask you about Minnesota because you grew up in Minneapolis. What was your experience like growing up here?
I was only a child. I was born near 713 3rd Avenue South, where that street, we call it Chinatown because there were two Chinese stores there. And that was it, there wasn't a town, but we called it Chinatown. Why? Because and the weekends, the laundrymen and the restaurateurs and any other Chinese locations, they came to that store of my father's, and that's why it's Chinatown, So I grew up there and on the second floor of 713, and I heard all this jabber and the Chinese. They brought in Chinese opera and so forth. So I was totally Chinese for a while, and my mother spoke only Chinese at that time until I went to school. I didn't know what to do. Washington grade school, and then to Bryan Junior High, and then to Central. By the time I graduated from Central, I was the treasurer of the class. So you can see how I went from nothing as far as an American culture person to treasurer of the class. So I was accepted in that sense, but I was not accepted as a real one of them in the sense of dating. I couldn't date girls because they wouldn't accept me, or the parents didn't accept me. So it was a hard time. Then I went to University of Minnesota, and the Viking National Guards got activated. So I became a soldier, and then I came out and decided to come to Hollywood. Then everything changed, I auditioned for, and I didn't audition, I just got put into the Groucho Marx You Bet Your Life, that show. And I did my impersonations, which I was good at. And I became the performer or contestant that got the second biggest fan mail ever on Groucho Marx show. So I decided to stay in Hollywood. It was to be a vacation, but then I stayed, and the rest is history. I tried to be in the class plays and whatever, but even then the prejudice showed up. Miss Gross, the drama teachers, was doing Wimples of Wimpole Street, Barretts of Wimpole Street, the name of the class play. And there was, it's a British play, so she said, well, now where would I put James? So she just did not even use me in the class play. She just substituted a white actor to play the doctor. So experienced that so-called hidden prejudice all through my whole life. and came to Hollywood, and still the problem persists. And I try my best to get out of that rut and form the East-West Players in Los Angeles, and that became a big theatrical group performing plays, and now it's probably the biggest, and even beyond that for Asian actors, and they're expanding into another huge building. So my efforts of trying to equalize the situation, in a sense, worked, starting with East-West Players until now. The Asians are winning awards all over the place, you know. So now this Everything Everywhere All at Once typifies what is going to happen.
Well, I so appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. My last question is just, do you ever make it back to Minnesota?
I've been back once only. We had a class reunion and was very different. By that time, I was semi-famous, and everybody. It's like I said, because in that two things. Once the class president Tom said to me, James, I never come to these class reunions, but I came because of you. You know, he was the president of the high school, and so in that little speech I made before the reunion, I said, well, I guess I could have been president, you know, and everybody applauded. So in a sense, it was very gratifying to see that the class had grown up and accepted people more or less as equals, or you know, and that I had the recognition of being a semi-famous person from their class, which was very gratifying to me and to them.
And then growing up in Minneapolis, did you have a favorite theater or place to visit?
Yeah, we live on about 3 blocks from the downtown where Dayton was, and Donaldson, that corner, you know, and the dime store was there. So my favorite thing was to go to that dime store, and for a nickel, you can get a whole bag of fresh potato chips. Isn't that wonderful? And so of course, there was White Castle. I visited once in a while. Those things have stayed in my memory. And the State Fair was wonderful. But that was the only so-called recreation I had in those days. Uncle Sing Bo Suk left his laundry on that day, and then took little James Hong and took him to visit all those animals and wonderful championship events that the Minnesota Fair had. So my memories of the fair is very, very vivid, because there was no other entertainment for little James Hong. So I thank you, Uncle Simpo Suk, if he's listening anywhere. Thank him for his kindness. So in a sense, we all should be kind to other people wherever they are. If it touches your heart in some way, please do something for people all over the world.